Let's bring back former air traffic controller Todd Yeary and former Black Hawk crew chief Mark McEathron. It's good to have you both joining me again. Thank you. I don't have anything new to ask you about Philly, but Chief, I was watching you earlier today explain the dynamic inside the Black Hawk. Now that we've learned this was an experienced crew, they were doing what was required of them as an annual nighttime operation, a certification. And how do you explain for people like me who do not understand the sophistication? I've been in a Black Hawk many times, but I don't know flying at all. It seems so steady and consistent going across as the other regional jet is landing, so consistent that people early on used it as reason to speculate it was intentional. How do you understand the disconnect between air traffic control communicating with them, but them not adjusting to what the air traffic controller thought would have been obvious?
Yeah, it's just a misunderstanding completely between the air crew and air traffic control. We see the Black Hawk coming down the Potomac, just passing a peninsula and then making a slight right turn. And that slight right turn was about 5 seconds before impact. And what immediately stood out to me in that turn is when we make those turns, there's two things that are happening. One pilot is looking at a map. Two, the second pilot is listening to them. The person that's looking at the map is going to give them a heading to turn to. So the second pilot is going to be looking at the compass for the heading. So those are two guys with their eyes inside the aircraft, making a turn right there. So that stands out. They just had left a refueling point. There's checklists that you have to go through that they will be looking down in their lap on. And the crew chief is going to be on the opposite side on that Black Hawk, back by that door, than where the impact would have come from. And so it's a perfect scenario of a blind spot. What we see from the camera on the ground is an entirely different perspective. It looks straight because you don't see the turn going this way or this way from that angle. It just looks like it's still straight. And so it's a bad perspective taking information from the ground versus being in the seat itself. When you have air traffic control asking them if they see a flight, the two-way communication is really important in the aircraft. I would have liked to have heard that going on the outside of the aircraft, that they confirmed exactly where it was in the air. But yeah, it sounds like just a real miscommunication and a lack of understanding on which aircraft people were looking at.
Yeah, Todd, we were having explained to us that the people in the chopper have to deal with three-dimensional movement of that craft. There's pitch, there's roll, and there's yaw. And that creates all different angles, and obviously you could get confused no matter how sophisticated. The question of, well, maybe they thought the air traffic controller was talking to them about a different plane, the one that was taking off. Maybe that's the one they thought that was being addressed, which is why they never altered course at all. The communication from the air traffic controller, did that sound like the right way to communicate what was needed to be communicated?
Chris, I'm glad you raised that question. I want to go back to the audio segment that you shared at the beginning. That was the part of the audio recording that I had been wondering about from the first time they started playing snippets. That's the initial indication of what we would call calling traffic. The Black Hawk pilots are told you've got traffic, you've got a position, you've got a distance, you've got an altitude, and then there's an instruction about the movement. What was interesting to me is it's purported that the pilot of the Black Hawk asked for authority to maintain visual separation, which was approved. At that point in time, the controller believes that the traffic that was called and the pilot responded to is actually the airplane they're talking about. And the pilot has now said, I will assume responsibility for maintaining separation from that aircraft. That was approved. The second transmission is as you begin to see the paths converge, and obviously the altitudes are changing, is again asking the Black Hawk pilot, do you have the RJ in sight? That's the second time, not the first time. And so there's an issue there of whether or not the identification was maintained, noting the three-dimensional responsibilities inside the helicopter.
Right.
And at night, when you're identifying an aircraft by strobe, by movement, it is sometimes difficult to be able to continue to track a moving aircraft while you're also trying to maintain flight control.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.